Hi, my name's FFG, and I just want to bring some observations to you that I've made today about the two new screenshots that were released. This is February the 19th, 2017. Okay, so the first screenshot is the one of Cloud crouching behind a box. Don't really care too much about the possible cover system. That's not important. What is important that we can see at the bottom, he has underneath his HP, you can see that there's an ATP gauge. Next to the ATB, whatever gauge, there are 3 bars, and they are empty at the moment. Now, this indicates to me that they are bars that can charge up one by one, and importantly, they are at 0 out of combat, or before combat has actually begun as such. Okay, so let's move down to the second screenshot, and we can see a lot more things going on here. First of all, on the ground you can see a bunch of Aoe Attacks Indicators from the opponent. You can see them behind him, you can see them in front of him. It looks like he's doing a big barrage of missile attacks or whatever, and you can see marks on the ground where presumably you don't want to be standing. Which leads me to the most important point about how the gameplay is going to work in this game, and it's, I believe, at least in boss fights, I'm not sure how they'll make it work in regular fights, but you're going to be dodging attacks as the indicators appear on the ground. So you're going to be moving your characters, and not only, you're not just going to be moving your main one character, but in Final Fantasy 7 you control 3 characters, up to 3 characters usually. And so you switch between your characters constantly, and if a boss is making an attack like this, you'll have time to respond, and you'll need to respond by moving all 3 of your characters out of the way of the attack so they don't get hit. Obviously that's quite tricky to do on a console. In Final Fantasy 15 I think you just controlled one character, didn't you, and you ran him around and you other guys just done their own thing. But in Final Fantasy 7 you switch between your 3 characters. And so when you see these indicators on the ground, you're going to have to move Cloud out of the way. As you can see in the screenshot, he's being moved. And Barrett, as you can see, you'll switch over to your next character, and Barrett, as you can see, is not in danger at the moment, and he's just attacking. Okay, so based on that information, a lot of the gameplay is going to be about moving around. So what else do you do? Well, you have to, you have your ATP B bar, which fills up and then allows you to perform regular actions from your menu on the left here, your attack and magic and item menu. So you're going to be busy running around a lot, and every so often your ATB bar is going to, the gauge is going to fill up. Then you can perform one attack. However, because you're busy moving around, you might not have time to perform an attack or an action using your menu. And so what's going to happen is you're going to gain a charge in your ATB bar, and it's going to charge up 1, 2 and 3 times. And what that's going to allow you to is be able to spend as much time as you want moving your characters, whilst also having the time to perform actions when you're available to do so. And I think they've implemented this because it allows them to have all of these mechanics in the game for 3 separate characters, without needing without bogging the player down too much, and without the necessity for a wait time or a wait screen. So usually in Final Fantasy 7 and even in 15 there was a pause mode or a wait mode where you could pause the game completely and give yourself time to perform, to decide what to do next. Now, that obviously slows down gameplay a lot, and although some people like it if they're old school, that's not the direction that they want to go at anymore. They want a much more action-based game. So they had the option to pause the game in Final Fantasy 15, but in 7, they've removed that and instead let us stack up ATB bars. So that's the idea that they've come up with. I think it's a really cool idea. And it's allowed them to implement this extra thing in the game where you can reposition all 3 of your characters to dodge incoming enemy attacks. And I'm really excited about that, because in Final Fantasy 15 I didn't play it, but I've watched lots of people play it, and the combat was all about well, you hold down circle or whatever. You just literally hold down circle. Every so often you have a arbitrary dodge where you press a dodge button or a parry button. Now in Final Fantasy 7, I don't think they're going to have that because it'll be way too much. It would be way too difficult for the player to manage this arbitrary dodge thing for all three of their characters, and it would be silly just giving it to one of them like they did in Final Fantasy 15, because in Final Fantasy 7 you're controlling all three characters, you're moving them all about equally and performing regular actions with all three of them equally, unlike in Final Fantasy 15 where you just play one guy. So those are the main points that I've drawn from these screenshots, and I think that's really indicative of a new direction, and I'm very excited about it because it seems like it's going to be a lot more fun than Final Fantasy 15 was. The other things you can see from the screenshot is the limit. Similarly to the ATP gauge, it has it can stack up to 3 times. It can charge 3 bars there. In Final Fantasy 7 you generally had 1 or 2 limits, and when your gauge went from 0 to whatever to max, you could use your limit, and you just picked your best limit. Usually it's either your AoE limit or your multi-attack limit. When you leveled up you could get more limits, but you always generally went with the best one. You didn't really have any choice whatsoever there. So splitting it into 3 separate bars here means that they want you to be able to utilize all 3 of your most recently learnt limits, depending on the situation. Hopefully depending on the situation, because they've used this kind of system before where you build up a gauge. For example, in Final Fantasy 6 you had a character called Cyan, and when it came to attack with him, you could wait up to say 20 seconds, and the longer you waited, the more powerful your attack would be. And it also had various different effects depending if you waited 5 seconds or 15 seconds. A bit like the limit system they've got here. Of course, this is you only wait for 3 charges instead of with Cyan it was more like 7 or 8. However, as observed with Cyan in Final Fantasy 6, it was not a fun system to use, at least not for me. Just sitting there waiting for your gauge to charge up just to deal more damage when you could have just been attacking in the first place to deal more damage. It didn't make sense, it was counterintuitive, and I don't think it's a very good idea. So what I'm hoping is that the 3 limits that you have available to you in Final Fantasy 7, and you can see that there will be 3 different ones, because in the screenshot you can see currently for Cloud it's stacked at 1 bar and it says the name of his limit right underneath it in Japanese kanji, and it says level 1 next to it. It's got a button prompt next to it, and there's a button prompt over Cloud's head, so you know that his limit is currently available to him. You can press triangle at the moment to use his 1 bar version of his limit, and it's filling up beyond that. You can see into 2 bar limit. So what I'm hoping they do is provide a justification for you either using your 1 bar limit as opposed to your 3 bar limit, or vice versa. Why would you have a reason to not use your 1 bar limit? It has to be cost effective to wait that amount of time to fill it up to max. So that's the issue I see with this system. As a whole, I don't think it's a very good system to implement. I'd rather if there was just one single gauge, it filled all the way up, and then you got to choose between your 3 limits, all of equal kind of power level, but perhaps all 3 of them do something slightly different. Maybe one's an AoE and one's a multi-attack, or one does status effects or something like that. I'd rather see them all be a choice that you make between each one of them at the same time, rather than just a choice whether or not to deal damage now or to deal damage later. So that's the other thing I saw from the screenshots. Another thing I noticed was that because there's this implementation of AoE attack indicators on the ground, it got me thinking that usually in a game, if your enemies can do it, and so you can use AoE attacks by targeting on the ground. Now I don't think they're going to do that in Final Fantasy 7, just because there's so much going on. Half the gameplay is about repositioning your hero, the other half is about choosing actions to perform with your menu. I don't think they're going to implement AoE based spells as well on top of that. If they did, it would be something like you need to move, let's say Eris needs to move nearer to Cloud to heal him, or if she's not near both of your party members, then only one of them will get healed by her limit, something like that. Or if you use like all fire, all materia on your enemies, then you have to position it in order to excuse me, in order to hit all of them at the same time. I don't think they're going to bother with that mechanic on the player side of things, just because they've got a lot going for them at the moment, and it'll probably complicate things a bit too much. But we will see. It's certainly a possibility if regular enemies don't utilize sort of attack indicators themselves, and perhaps that's a good opportunity for the player to have a bit of fun doing that himself. Whereas in boss fights, you can see they're going to be moving around, and you're going to be dodging a lot anyway. So you'll be busy enough doing that. Okay, I think that's about it for my observations. As I said, I'm super excited about what I see, because I was just expecting a hold circle kind of Final Fantasy 15, pretty uninteractive and, you know, non-interesting kind of gameplay, and it's really cool to see something that is innovative, and combines, it manages to combine both the action style of moving your characters around with the kind of turn-based ATP style of things, without having to pause the gameplay in any way, by using the stacking of ATP bars up to 3 stacks, it seems like. So that is really cool, and if you have any observations of your own, if you think something that I've said is inaccurate, or you have a different interpretation of it, please let me know, because yeah, this is my thoughts so far, and I would like to be proven wrong if that's possible. If not, I will continue looking forward to the next screenshots that come along. Thanks for listening. This has been Final Fantasy Generations, and I'll see you next time.